I'm feeling a lot better than Rachel Reeves is at the moment, I suspect, because she's all over the front pages getting blamed for almost everything that's going wrong with the economy. I mean, it's all spiralled out of control. And I think my favourite front page headline is on the front of the Times. Rattled Reeves searches for new ideas on growth. It's almost like she's stopping people in the street and going, sorry, excuse me, any ideas? We need some growth. What can you tell me? What can you give for us? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's not as if they had 5 years to come up with some plans for that, apart from what it seemed to be, which is hiking taxes at the last budget, which most economists will tell you is the complete opposite thing you want to do to drive growth. I have to say as well, I listened to that news bulletin just before coming on, and I think they played a clip from Lisa Nandy saying that they inherited a situation where inflation was at 11%. That's totally wrong.
It's not true.
Inflation at 2%.
Right.
So clearly she's neither not au fait with the current economic situation or is just willfully trying to mislead. But anyway, on to Rachel Reeves. You're right. This is incredibly damaging for her, especially this trip to China. I mean, I do understand she's in a bit of a bind with this one because most political strategists will say if you are in the middle of a crisis, do not go abroad, stay at home, just because of the looks. I mean, think about Boris Johnson, the London riots, or Dominic Raab when the Taliban was encroaching on Afghanistan, or Kwasi Kwarteng the last time this happened. Yeah. But if she stays, then maybe she looks even more rattled, and therefore the markets start to spiral even further. But it doesn't really get away from the fact that the actual economic situation now is incredibly bad. Some top economists even comparing it to the 1976 debt crisis, where we had to go cap in hand to the IMF because you had very, very high borrowing costs and then also the pound slumping as it has done now. For Rachel Reeves politically, who came into the election saying the Tories are bad, they've lost control of the economy. I am, in her sort of words, the Iron Chancellor who's going to restore fiscal credibility. Well, that fiscal credibility looks very quickly to be going up in smoke.
Well, exactly right. And actually, I mean, anyone that I talk to who remembers what it was like in June, just before the Tories lost the election, the economy was actually in a pretty good place. It wasn't in a bad place. It was beginning to come out of the inflationary spiral. There was growth suddenly coming from various different sectors of industry. We all know that Rishi Sunak was not exactly a popular Prime Minister, and the Tories can't certainly be said to have done a good job. However, the economy has taken a proper pounding since July, since they got in, and it's now far worse. And I don't think there's anybody in the city or in any financial institution or in any business organisation who's got a good word to say about Rachel Reeves. And, it's all gone it's all kind of disappeared before her eyes, really.
Yeah, and before the election, she got a big list of business leaders who were rowing behind their plans and saying, we think that you have a good plan to grow the economy. You haven't really heard a squeak from much of them in recent months, especially after that budget. I think people were pretty sick with the high levels of tax which the Tories have presided over, to be fair, for many, many years. A lot of it down to COVID, which basically forced their hand because we spent hundreds of billions of pounds tackling the pandemic, and therefore we had to raise money somehow. But I think people were very sick of looking at their bank statements every month and seeing how much of it was going out in tax. But then for Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer to come in and say that their main mission was growth, that was their flagship number one, top priority for government, and then raising taxes, especially on businesses who who employ people in this country. It just seems very counterintuitive, and that's not my view. That's just the view of many economists in this country. Many businesses are going to have to pay these taxes, and let's not forget, we talk about businesses in the abstract a lot of the time, but they obviously employ people in this country. So at the end of the day, it's always workers and then consumers who will suffer.
Yeah, absolutely right. And this is the thing, I speak to business people all the time, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, big businesses. They're all absolutely incandescent with rage at the amount of extra money they're going to have to be paying to the Exchequer just because of these national insurance changes. I mean, it's absolutely crippling them.
Yeah, and you want to make Britain an attractive place to invest, and this is sort of the opposite of that. Other countries are undercutting us and this sort of stuff. So it is quite damaging for Labour, I think. When you come to the politics of it, what do? I don't think they can U-turn, as the Tories are encouraging them to do, on the on the hike to national insurance contributions that kick in April. I think they've expended way too much political capital now to even try and do that. And then Rachel Reeves has been pretty adamant that she's only going to have one fiscal event a year. So the next tax cutting opportunity, or opportunity to sort of remedy some of this, will be next autumn.
Right.
Well, that's 10 months away, and in that time you could have irreparable damage and scarring to the UK economy. So it's incredibly tough for them at the moment. They're in a bit of a bind, but all you have to do, I think, is look at the opinion polls to show that not a lot of this stuff has been well received.
No, it really hasn't. And this trip to China, by the way, while, as you say, it might be unwise because she should be here defending her situation, she hasn't really been much in evidence, has she, since things started to go wrong? I mean, since about mid-December, when the market started to get the jitters, she hasn't really been out front and centre at all. She hasn't really made any major statements, and she's off to China without any press coverage whatsoever. She hasn't allowed anybody to go with her. She's taken Andrew Bailey, the head of the Bank of England, and a few other bods for the Bank of England and some private banking companies. She's not going to see the president, the Prime Minister of China. She's going to see his deputy. What exactly is she hoping to achieve over there?
Yeah, you're right. She hasn't been very present in recent weeks, or in fact recent days. And I think are really good, whatever the situation in the markets, for a chancellor to come out themselves. Because a lot of the time, Secretaries of State, when they have urgent questions in the House of Commons, as we had yesterday, they do often send their deputies to go and answer it. But sometimes I think the really impressive ones, and the ones that show they've really got a grip on the situation, actually go themselves. They show that they are in charge. They've got a firm hand on the tiller. And I think that would have gone some way yesterday to actually show that Rachel Reeves was in control of this situation. Right. Sending out Darren Jones, as capable as I'm sure he is, it didn't really send, I don't think, the right signal that she was there totally across this and sort of mapping out a way forward. In terms of China, it was a controversial trip anyway. Before the pound started to slump and the bond yields started to go up, because obviously China's actions, pretty hostile actions towards the West in recent years, have been a bone of contention. We obviously had this in 2015 under David Cameron and George Osborne, this new golden era of relations in which they sucked up to the Chinese, rolled out the red carpets, and then ended up looking quite silly when we had crackdown in Hong Kong or persecution of the Uyghurs, because it looked like that we were, basically jumping into bed with a pretty horrible autocracy. That being said, China, obviously the second biggest economy in the world, it's very difficult to ignore them. We rely on them intensely for imports and goods. And therefore, listen, if she wants to go over there and comes back with some looser trade ties, then fine. If it improves the economy, then great. But always with China, we do need to have that almost arm's length relationship where we don't excuse, I don't think, some of the more hostile acts that they execute.
Yeah.